Hello, if you are just tuning in, we are trying again. We had a small error with the first live stream, but this one should hopefully work. So we are just mingling and chilling before the show. The show will be starting in about 7 minutes. I hope that you are having a wonderful evening, and I look forward to your participation. Thank you very much. Feel free to chime in on the chat, say cool things, ask any questions. There will be Q&A at the end of the show, and it will all be good.
Little bit. Yep, it is.
Yeah.
I'm like,
I don't know. Alicia says she doesn't know where it is, so we'll see.
I have to be prepared. I have to have my Kleenex. Because she wants me to go. And who am I to disappoint?
Where am I sitting?
You're sitting right there.
I thought we wanted like teachers up front.
No. And you're allowed to come, since you're part of my bubble, if you want to, you can push your chair closer. You don't have to, if you want.
Maybe just take a touch. Is that in your way?
No, you're great. I think I can see it all.
Okay. That's what we like to do. Because I know this.
I usually.
You're the only one who knows the entire thing, she told me.
Live in the library.
Oh, in the family, honey.
Yes, the family, yes. I have to.
Oh, I'm so glad she remembered this pain.
Or that you've thought of this fan, and remembered when I had planned to tell you to bring it. I'm so glad you did.
This is the experience for real show. Every time I've been to a show, I always am sitting in those booths that are in the upper balcony, and it's always so hot, so you're always like fanning yourself in the program. So this just adds to the ambiance.
It's the authentic experience.
Exactly.
So we're doing that.
This is only part way in.
Yes.
Mine too.
So that's
Nobody else
the
comes to help me remember that I don't like it.
I don't even make sure I silence my phone.
Keyboard.
I almost forgot.
Go ahead and play that.
I'll do the same thing if you haven't.
Alright.
Silence your phone.
Already did.
I always have it on vibrate, so that's a good reminder.
Okay, I am now on silent. I told my son I'm turning it off for a couple hours. He's like, we're all good.
Evan's just grabbing
I'll text Lynn real quick. It's on my cell phone, just in case she forgot what time. In case I forgot East Coast.
That sort of is a natural languid flow of music.
What?
Yeah.
When she takes a question, it's for her to respond and not you.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. My name is Heidi Rose, and I'm professor and chair of the Communication Department. I want to welcome you to the Communication Department studio and to Big Little Sister. So before I start, I'm gonna do some thanks and a couple announcements, and then Alicia's performance. And besides being professor and chair of the department, I'm also Alicia's thesis advisor. So first, some thanks. This is a collective, collaborative effort. It's a lot of work. So first, I want to thank the other members of Alicia's thesis committee, my colleagues Shauna McDonald and Sherry Bowen. And I would like to thank Chad Foz, our digital media coordinator and wonderful colleague, whose technical assistance and support has been invaluable and mostly remote.
Woo! Chad, yeah!
Also, my colleague Shares and wonderful performance studies student Jake Metzger, who are doing sound and lights for this performance. Also, I would like to do another little shout out to the media production faculty and students, too many to name, because we share this space and it takes a lot of accommodating and compromising, and I'm very grateful to them for accommodating the needs of this performance all week. And last but absolutely not least, I want to thank Alicia's family, because
Woo! Yeah, family!
as you will see, they are integral to this whole piece. Okay, now a couple of announcements. If you like what you see here, we have 2 more performance studies events happening in the next month. First, the aforementioned Jake Metzger is doing his solo senior capstone performance right here in this space on April 15th and April 18th. And then on April 16th, we're doing a virtual performance showcase that's featuring students from performance studies classes in this current semester. So you don't want to miss either one of these, and you'll just look for some information in the next few weeks. Okay, so now on to a little bit about Big Little Sister. So for those of you who may not be familiar, this is an example of autoethnographic performance. So Alicia used some tools of ethnography to sort of point the lens, the critical, analytical, scholarly lens at herself, to understand more deeply larger social, cultural, political, historical realities in which she has grown and is a part. The performance here is used as a method of inquiry, and it's also the means, the medium through which the product is created. So performance here is both process and product, and that's just an important thing to kind of remember. Also, this is a really intimate piece, and it's designed to be in this kind of a black box space with a small audience. It's designed for this in-person experience. And while we are so grateful that there is a wonderful virtual audience out there, please, as you're experiencing it, just keep in mind that it wasn't designed for the camera, but we're really glad that you're there. After the performance, which is a little under 40 minutes, there's going to be a talk back. We hope that you will all be able to stay and participate, and we'll make sure that we moderate the chat. So if you have comments and questions that you want to post virtually, we'll be able to engage in some conversation afterward. And now for my in-person audience, please remember to silence any devices that make noise. And here is Big Little Sister.
The Sunshine Room. That's our nickname for my childhood bedroom, complete with sunshine yellow paint and Tweety Bird wallpaper to this day. It has really gotten to be a mess, though. It really needs a good cleaning.
We're gonna be helping out with some. No, Tommy, you put that back. That is not a toy. No. Okay, we're gonna be helping with some house cleaning. We're gonna be opening up some windows, let the sun shine in. And Sarah, no, you can't eat that. No. Ryan, would you actually help and stop laughing at me?
That's my older sister, Amelia. That bit got her to the quarterfinals of a voice acting competition this winter. Yeah, they cut over 300 other people, but they kept her in. How amazing is that? Oh, what can I do to try and explain a bit of our relationship? Here we go. The Sibling Slam Book. What it's really like to have a brother or sister with special needs. I met the editor of this, Don Meyer. Fantastic guy. Absolutely one of my heroes. Reader, what should we know about you? I'm in 3rd grade and love to read. If that isn't the understatement of the year, let me tell you. Oh, here's a good one to explain Amelia a little better. The Way I See It, a personal look at autism and Asperger's, by Temple Grandin, PhD. If you're not familiar with Temple Grandin, absolutely recommend checking her out. She is amazing. She's basically the original autistic self-advocate. Oh, what else? Yeah. Here's another one from when I was a kid. Topics in Autism, 2nd edition. Siblings of Children with Autism. A Guide for Families. By Sandra L. Harris, PhD, and Beth A. Glassberg, PhD. Yeah, not 1, but 2 PhDs on this baby. I got this as a 7-year-old. I tell you what, if that didn't signal a future career in academia, nothing would have. But enough of me talking about Amelia. She's perfectly capable about telling you who she is in her own words.
Miss Amelia, and I will be in your class this semester or year. Some of the things I think you should know about me are, I have Asperger's syndrome, I have a hard time understanding body language, I think in pictures, and sometimes I can get really stressed.
Oh boy, can she ever. I mean, you gotta understand, this was the early 2000s. My sister and I, we were children, elementary schoolers. She was going into 5th grade, I was going into 2nd. I was familiar with autism in a vague sort of way. A boy who was in my kindergarten class is autistic. But it meant nothing to my classmates if I went up to them and was like, hey, guess what? We figured it out. Amelia's an Aspie. So I came up with an easy explanation for them pretty quickly. Okay, so look, here's the deal. Amelia has Asperger's syndrome, which means that her mental age is a bit behind her age, so she acts younger than she really is sometimes. And she has trouble understanding body language. So she might stand too close to you in conversation, and even if you back up, she'll move in again because she doesn't really get personal space. And she'll probably only talk about the things that she wants to talk about. That explanation cuts it for 8-year-olds, but adults tend to want a little more real information than that. So back in 2005, my parents wrote this 2-page letter to our extended family and friends to explain what being an Aspie really meant. Some of it is outdated now since Asperger's syndrome has been folded in under autism spectrum disorder, but the end of it is still the same. She is what she is, and she cannot help it. Before this diagnosis, she was our sweet little Amelia, who was very smart and very sensitive. After this diagnosis, she is still that same sweet little girl. She's not fragile or mentally unstable and does not need sympathy. We do need to realize she has different reactions and must deal accordingly with them. It is okay to help her recognize inappropriate social behavior, but understand that this is not willful misbehavior and correct with compassion. That's something that some people are better at than others.
Miss Amelia, and I will be...
Some people are not so good at correcting with compassion. You always hope for the best, but some people just don't get it, Asperger's is a part of who Amelia is, but it's not the entirety of who she is. It does definitely have an impact, though, I think, obviously. But one of the impacts is, the way that our brains work. For example, take how we each categorize spoken communication. She thinks in pictures that change over time. You'll be seeing some of them on the screen tonight, and you'll be able to see they were super abstract when she was 12, and nowadays they're a lot more concrete, even if the images here are only a partial representation. Whereas I think in words, pretty much just big block letters, that's how my brain works. Is that part of her Asperger's? I'm really not sure. On the one hand, Temple Grandin, remember her? She talks about thinking in pictures as a key trait of autistic people. On the other hand, I talk to a lot of people about this, and it seems like a lot of people think in pictures. And they don't even have the Asperger's personality that my mom likes to tease me about having. It's one of those things that I don't think I'll ever really have an answer for. But hey, you get used to those when your sister doesn't get diagnosed until she's 10 years old. That's not to say that we didn't know something was up, though. Take it from me, everybody knew.
Aware of it, you know? And since I got diagnosed the summer before 5th grade, these were the people that had dealt with me being like this since preschool, kindergarten, 1st grade. Mom said there were people brought into my class to talk about it, and they didn't come in until the last half hour. She tried to tell them they'd need more time, but they were like, "Oh no, we know what they're gonna ask and we'll cover it, it's okay." They had to hold the buses because my classmates had so many questions, and they still had to be like, "Okay, we have to stop now, you have to get on your bus."
Yeah, in a small town where everybody's had everybody figured out since kindergarten, trust me, if you were in the building, you knew when my sister had a meltdown. And these people were usually in the room for the start of it. It really didn't seem to take a lot to set her off back in those days. Too long under fluorescent lights, big echoey spaces, lack of windows. Well, at least nobody's wearing hot pink. That was one perk of uniforms in elementary school. Nobody could wear the colors that upset Amelia, except for on the occasional dress down days. That doesn't mean that there weren't other stressors around, though.
Some of the things that make me really stressed are bright colors, especially vivid pink and muddy green, fluorescent lights, loud noises and echoes like on the bus or in gym class, when kids are not following rules, when I feel like nobody is listening to me, working in groups, bullies, bugs, especially flying ones, bees, flies, mosquitoes, gnats, etc. And when someone uses the phrase, "Oh my God."
Nobody likes a stressed out sibling. I know typical siblings have a very push and pull relationship where they make fun of each other and then tattle to mom and dad, but my sister and I, we weren't like that. We couldn't be. Part of being an Aspie is that Amelia is a very literal person. For example, when we were kids, an old dog of ours got sick and then unexpectedly got better. And our parents decided this would be a great time to sit us down at the kitchen table all serious and, okay, so, we only really budgeted for his food and vet bills up to this point. We haven't budgeted for them any further. So since we know now that we get to keep the dog, in order to do that, we have to get rid of one of you two. I burst out laughing immediately. Amelia burst into tears. Yeah, we were both elementary schoolers, but I got that it was a joke. I did what any sister would do. I looked out for her. And she had her ways of looking out for me, too. Reader, how would you describe your relationship with your sib? Extremely close. We really were pretty close back in the day. It was a good thing. Not that we're not close now, but there was something special about it back in those days. There was a Christmas when we were little. I was about to turn 5. Amelia had turned 7. And our parents, the coolest parents on the block, got us Game Boy Colors. Amelia got Pokemon Silver version, which is the 2nd generation. I got Blue version, the 1st generation. And my literal sister, at all times, in Silver version, you have the chance to name the rival after you've encountered him once. And the professor comes and is like, okay, so who was that? What's his name? And she spent about 10 minutes looking for those doggone question marks. And she finally found them. And she named what the rival told her his name was. Question mark, question mark, question mark. But I will say this, she was better at it than me because she did not skip the tutorial that was actually optional. I assumed it was just like the show. She had the chance. I got stuck. And so I went to her for help because that's what you do, Your older sister knows everything in the world, doesn't she? She found out that I was on the 5th gym with 1 Pokemon. Just 1. My starter, now a Venusaur. And she made me go all the way back to Pallet Town, to the very beginning of the game, and just start chucking Pokeball after Pokeball after Pokeball at the very first Pidgey that I came across. Because anything else, my Venusaur was just knocking out. And then she made me walk from Pallet Town through every route in town that I had already beaten. That way I was catching Pokemon and leveling them up as you're supposed to throughout the game. Now granted, it might sound like an obnoxious sibling thing to tell you how to play your game, but when you're two little kids as obsessed with that series as we were, there was no way of showing off how cool you were than knowing what was up with the games, the show, any of it. And I tell you what, we knew everything. She did know more than me though, like I said. She knew what was up. But I promise you, we both
Stuck.
then
And I found out she only had
we both then and now had every word to that theme song memorized. And
You teach me and I'll teach you. Pokemon, gotta catch 'em all, gotta catch 'em all, Pokemon.
I have a lot of really good memories from when I was a kid like that. A lot of them do revolve around our shared fandoms. I mean, Pokemon, of course. The OG, I don't think anything will ever replace the place that it has in both of our hearts. Oh, what else have we got here? Doctor Who, little more recent. The 8th Doctor was our first, and as any Whovian knows, you never forget your first Doctor. Final Fantasy VII, probably the most current. Very important. We're desperately awaiting the PlayStation 5 for that one. Oh, the other OG, superheroes. Marvel, DC, doesn't matter. We love all of them. Though I will say, she's a little more inclined towards Marvel. I'm a little more inclined towards DC. I'm right. Oh man, House Rules. I probably shouldn't have read this book as a kid. I was in middle school, so it wasn't as bad as it could have been, but there's definitely some inappropriate content in here. But it was so rare to find a book that actually got it, you know? I wanted everybody to read this book. Jacob Hunt is a teen with Asperger's syndrome. He's hopeless at reading social cues or expressing himself well to others, though he is brilliant in many ways. But he has a special focus on one subject, forensic analysis. A police scanner in his room clues him into crime scenes, and he's always showing up and telling the cops what to do. And he's usually right. But when Jacob's small hometown is rocked by a terrible murder, law enforcement comes to him. Jacob's behaviors are hallmark Asperger's, but they look a lot like guilt to the local police. And suddenly the Hunt family, who only want to fit in, are thrust into the spotlight. For Jacob's mother, Emma, it's a brutal reminder of the intolerance and misunderstanding that always threaten her family. For his brother, Theo, it's another indication of why nothing is normal because of Jacob. And over this small family, the soul-searing question looms. Did Jacob commit murder?
Feelings about the book. It's hard not to get agitated by the system being so set against. Like, I had to take it in small doses because it's like, he can't help it, stop it. And so, of course, the times that I'm watching him do these things that I've learned how not to do and watching the system burn him for it, and like, I'm cringing and I'm angry and I'm just, okay, we're done for the night. And having the chapters from the mom's and the younger brother's perspective, I don't like the parallels for you guys either. I acknowledge that they are accurate, but that doesn't mean that I like that they are. And I don't think that it would have been a good idea for me to have read the book before, because I would not have been able to leave it as parallels if I had read it when the two of you did. I was not emotionally capable of saying, these are the characters, this is my family. They are similar, but not the same. I think it's accurate and well written, but I don't like it.
All of that is totally valid. And yet, Riding the Bus with My Sister, a book that I've loved for so long and I no longer have the original cover. Nonfiction, older sister spends a year with her younger sister, who was diagnosed in the 60s with mild mental retardation. Wonder. Fiction, some chapters from the perspective of the older sister of the main character, who has facial deformities. Rules. Fiction, older sister, younger brother with autism. And house rules. These were the 4 books for me when I was a kid. I had others that let me write in my own answers or tried to give explanations, but these were the 4 that told the story of being a sib. And even out of the 4 of them, this one... So I run interference. I'm the one who physically drags Jacob away from a conversation when he's starting to freak people out by being too intense. I'm the one who tells him to stop flapping when he's nervous on the bus because it makes him look like a total nutcase. I'm the one who goes to his classes before I go to my own, just to let his teachers know that Jacob had a rough morning because we unexpectedly ran out of soy milk. In other words, I act like the big brother even though I'm not. This was the only one to get that being the younger sibling, it didn't always mean being the little one.
Quest, the now of Wolfspot. They didn't think too far in the future or the past. They kind of were in the now. The now of Wolfspot. It's kind of what I try to do in general. Good things and bad things. Because otherwise, I hold on to things too long. Which is why effects of things I keep. But the memory of a specific thing, unless it was a big event or a funny story, I don't usually keep them. If I really try, I can after a while, but I like just holding on to the after effects of this improved, this got better, this changed, rather than here's what happened that caused these things. The feelings are kind of part of that. Depends on how much I want them to be. There are some feelings that I don't want and some I do. And it's not like I forget that the things ever happened. If someone talks about the thing, there are good odds that I'll remember the thing. But they go to a different part of my brain that I don't just pull from on my own.
God, I wish I could do that. I mean, keeping on to the after effects of this change, this got better, that's amazing. But it's another one of those examples of my sister's and my brains working differently. She remembers the after effects, I remember the details of what happened. Who stood where, whose phone we used. I remember the feelings, but they tend to be the ones that I don't want. Take, for example, the day-long safe driving course that the 2 of us took in a tiny classroom with fluorescent lights and no windows. The instructors, 2 dudes probably in their 40s, they started off the day with a video that showed pretty graphic consequences of texting and driving. And they told us that we could close our eyes. I remember telling Amelia to close her eyes and to plug her ears too, because I remembered how upset such videos had made her when she was taking driver's ed courses. I remember closing my eyes, not plugging my ears, peeking, and really, really wishing that I hadn't. I remember eating our lunch outside from our little brown paper bags and knowing that a meltdown was coming. See, when my sister's upset, the tension radiates off of her no matter what. But there's a definite difference between the upset of, okay, things are just bad, and a meltdown is on its way. It's kind of like if a thunderstorm is coming. People all around the world get headaches and stuffy noses from barometric pressure changes and other cool sciencey things that I don't know. But in Minnesota, we smell a storm coming. It's a kind of anticipation that we're attuned to in this way. And I guess I don't really know if it's only a Minnesota thing, but I mentioned smelling a storm out here and people laugh at me, so I think it is. And don't get me wrong, nobody's so insensitive as to laugh when you're talking about your sister's meltdowns, but when she's having one, I remember everybody taking a turn on one of the 4 driving simulators that they had in another classroom. If you've ever watched The Big Bang Theory, the episode where they try to teach Sheldon how to drive and Penny hits him in the face with a pillow to simulate the airbags, kind of like that. The whole simulator was filled with all of these rule breakers. People that, wait, you were aware of what was going on around you and you were still following the rules. And my tension over it was a crack of lightning across the sky, aimed directly at the dumb little annoyances, like the friend in the back seat who wouldn't shut up and wanted you to call another friend while you were driving. Amelia's tension was the flash of lightning, spilling over the entire sky. You see, one of these rule breakers was a jaywalker. You had the green light and he ran across the crosswalk anyways. And on her turn, Amelia hit him. Now, it's obviously not a good thing. The screen showed him lying there, you could see red flashing at the corners of it, you could hear the sirens, and then the screen went dark. And then it came back to a video of a real live person, a judge, giving a sentence for vehicular manslaughter. And then it went dark again. The end, it's over, we're done. Now, I'd already been standing next to my sister. I had my hand on her shoulder, I was feeling her shake, seeing the tears start to spill down her cheeks, knowing that this was going to be the push over the edge. But the sound of sirens drew a crowd. My sister and I were the youngest people in that room. And yet this group of actual adults crowded around her with shit-eating grins on their faces to watch the fallout. And the instructors, they didn't do anything about it. I was the one who chased everybody away from her. I think I was one sentence short of threatening to punch one guy. I took her to another classroom that still had fluorescent lights and no windows, but at least we knew it was unlocked because we had been in there earlier in the day. I sat down on the floor with her, on her lap, because pressure helps her calm down when she's upset. I stayed with her like that for a while before we called Mom and Dad from my cell phone. I explained what had happened because she couldn't get the words out through her tears. We stayed there for probably another half an hour before she had calmed down just a notch, down from meltdown to just sobbing. And then I asked her if she would be okay if I left her on the phone with Mom and Dad. She said yes. So I went down to the next classroom and stuck my head back in. They were doing some worksheet or something, so both of the instructors were able to come out into the hallway with me. Then they finally asked if Amelia was okay. She will be, but you need to tell me right now if there's going to be anything like that for the rest of the day. They had never dealt with a meltdown before, so they had no clue what to do. They were just stumbling over their words. No, we're done with the driving simulator, we're done with the videos. Are you sure that she's okay? Yeah, sure, she will be, but we're gonna stay in the other classroom for a little bit. Well, do you guys want the worksheet? Are you sure? She's really okay? Sure. I took the dumb worksheet, brought it into the other room, immediately tossed it onto a desk and sat back down with my sister. We stayed there for the rest of the day, probably only another half an hour or so before the day was done. Our parents came and picked us up, at which point we went into the classroom, grabbed our things. I rode shotgun while Dad drove, and Mom took over sitting in the back seat with Amelia. And don't get me wrong, I have no regrets about my behavior that day. I would do it all again in a heartbeat if Amelia needed me to. If I have any regrets, it's only that I didn't punch the one guy who had the nerve to compliment his shit-eating grin with snickering at her. I mean, come on, can you imagine some dude in his 20s having to explain that he got punched by a 13-year-old girl? Can you imagine being a 13-year-old girl with zero interest in driving? Taking a day-long course to build on your pre-existing driving skills? Can you imagine what would happen if I hadn't been there?
There were times looking back at it where I hated it, but at the time it was just immense gratitude. And like I said, the reason looking back why I hated it was, oh, there's another example of how I'm a failure as a big sister.
My sister needed more. That's just a fact. And so it was my job to need less in turn. And if you want to know how deep set my role as the easy child is, I will truthfully tell you, it goes back to the womb. I mean, when our mom was pregnant with Amelia, she lost so much weight because she couldn't keep any food down. Plain yellow potato chips. That was it. Not even Ruffles. That's a very important detail. She made sure to remind me of it when I checked this story with her. Not even Ruffles would stay down for more than a couple of hours at a time.
When our mom was pregnant with Alicia, she couldn't get enough food. What are you doing? You drove by the McDonald's! Okay. There's a Wendy's coming up and get past it. Get past it! Arby's? Come on, give me something!
A mom spent 30 hours in labor at the hospital with Amelia. That's at the hospital, not even counting the pre-hospital time. It took that long before our mom, tough lady that she is, finally broke down and looked at the doctor and just whimpered. Help me. She says the doctor went over to the nurse and whispered something, and the nurse perked up right away. The super sucker? I can get the super sucker! They had to suck Amelia out of the womb, and on the way, she broke Mom's pelvis just to show how mad she was about it.
Mom spent 12 hours at the hospital in labor with Alicia. She and Dad brought calming instrumental CDs, and every doctor and nurse who walked into that room just relaxed. Oh, this room is so nice. She fell asleep between contractions, and Alicia was out of the womb so fast that the doctor actually tried to slow her down.
And the two of us have continued on that way ever since. I'm an adventurer, Amelia's a homebody. And I don't think that either one of those is a bad thing in and of itself. It's just when you're a homebody in a small town and everybody knows. For my entire childhood, through middle school, through high school, and even sometimes into college, I was always known first as Amelia's sister. And I just knew what people meant by that. You're associated with failure, with meltdowns, with spoiled. No, absolutely not. Separate those negative connotations from me. You know what? Just separate her from me. Separate all of it. We're done. And anyway, she is more than any of those negative connotations. She's more than any of you. She's more than any of you know, and more than any of you at all. She's too much. But she wouldn't be Amelia if she wasn't. And nobody on the planet could do the things that she did.
Class. I couldn't tell you what specific thing led to it anymore, but the teacher was dismissive, he was rude, he would slam on people's desks. He wouldn't have any regard for my needs. And I finally said, no, I can go to the special needs room. I can do that every hour of this class. I don't remember saying this specifically, but apparently the special needs teacher told me that I wasn't allowed to boycott it, that I had to go to the class. And Mom says that I looked at her and said, that's what they said to the ladies who were protesting for the right to vote. They weren't allowed to, but they did it anyway. So yeah, for a while I would just go to the special needs room every day for the regular time, and then also for math class. At some point, we had arranged a meeting. Mom said she couldn't go, so then I went and invited Dad. And Mom said, he's on the side of you should be going to class. And apparently I looked at him and said, you're uninvited. Well, he came anyway, so it didn't work. I'm still glad he did. Here's the other thing about this teacher. He was a basketball coach. He's a tall guy. So I had the meeting, and we worked something out to make it easier because of my needs. And so this guy that's about somewhere around 6 feet to this little high school girl steps up, looms over her, and says, I am the one in charge of this classroom. According to Mom, if you have to say that to the little high school girl, you're not in charge anymore.
She's absolutely right about that. And I mean, come on. That's what they said to those ladies who were protesting for the right to vote. I tell you what, that is in top 10 clapbacks, right up there with there's no need to call me Sir Professor from Harry Potter. I thought that was the coolest my sister had ever been. She was rebellious, she was badass, she was advocating for her needs. So naturally, when I had that same teacher for math a couple years later, he was the only person to never identify me as Amelia's sister. It's probably for the best that he didn't. I don't think he was quite as proud of her as I was. But it would have been nice if somebody outside of our immediate family had seen what she was doing and said, wow, your sister's advocating for herself like that? I mean, that's awful that she has to, but that's amazing that she is. Because I would have agreed. I know that I would have. I was so proud of her. I mean, I was in middle school at this point. I hated my sister pretty solidly, but I was absolutely proud of her for that one. That was the coolest she had ever been. Yeah, I was proud. I was so proud. I was definitely proud of her.
What's wrong?
Nothing.
Are you sure you're okay?
Yeah, I'm good. I have to justify and insist that I was proud of my sister, because if you knew me in those days, you would have doubted that I was telling the truth. But I'm not lying. I was so proud. And I really am fine right now. That sounds like I'm lying though, doesn't it? How do I explain? Remember I mentioned Doctor Who? Where are my Whovians at? Shout out to Doctor Who fans. I've taken to calling this feeling my Cyberman mode. If you're not familiar with the series, the Cybermen are villains who have deleted all emotion. They view emotion as a hindrance and its deletion as upgrades, as progress. And you know what? God damn it if I don't believe them sometimes. I mean, just think about it. No pain, no hatred, no guilt, no feeling guilty for hating the people who you're supposed to love. Huh? Yeah, I sound like a psychopath, don't I? Or a sociopath. As much as I love my BBC Sherlock, I'm not a psychopath, I'm a high-functioning sociopath. Do your research. I am aware that neither of those is a healthy life goal to have. But what can I say? I've always been a fan of the villains. Draco Malfoy was one of, if not my very first crush. The Joker is my favorite character in anything of all time. When we were little, Amelia and I went to Universal Studios Islands of Adventure with our family. And Amelia came up to me in one of the stores with the biggest grin on her face. And she was like, I found your shirt. I was like, we've never been here before. I'm not wearing any shirt from here. What are you talking about? But, oh, yes, you did. This is my shirt. You say villain like it's a bad thing. As you can see, I still wear this shirt frequently to this day and adore it. Because it absolutely is mine. You see, when we were kids, Amelia and I didn't play with dolls or action figures. We played by us. And what I mean by that is we would embody the characters. We would run around from room to room, pretending that we were racing from rooftop to rooftop. We would do their voices, we would do their dialogue. It was great. And in all the games that we had, I can only think of one where Amelia took on the antagonist role instead of me. And Jason Todd is an anti-hero, not a villain. Very important distinction. But I loved being the villain. I relished in it. I relied on what I had heard about actors who play the bad guys, that they're really the nicest people because they get all their evilness out through their characters. I was 5, cut me a break. But I really am the villain in my head. When I talk about these things, when I'm criticizing my sister with a disability, when I'm airing dirty laundry, I'm the villain. And I don't know how to deal with that unless if I delete all the bad feelings about it. And if I'm the Cyberman, Amelia is definitely the Doctor. You look from far away and okay, there's just another human, but you get up close and start interacting and there's something in the words and actions that, okay, this isn't just any other human. There's a few close companions who can keep up, but most everyone is just left behind in the whirlwind wake, aware of this being's presence forevermore, but not able to keep up on the journey. Yeah, my sister's definitely the Doctor. She's got too much emotion for her one heart. It spills over into what should be the Gallifreyans' 2 hearts. And I'm the Cyberman, deleting the negative emotions that I have, even if it costs me the positive ones. Forever at odds. Except, the Doctor did have a Cyberman companion for a while. Sort of a Cyberman head, don't overthink it, but his name was Handles. And as far as we know, aside from the TARDIS, the Doctor's ship, Handles is the longest lasting companion of the Doctor. 300 years together on Trenzalore. 300 years. That's a long time to ask of anybody, let alone my sister and me. But it doesn't matter if that would be too hard for me, because it's not about me. I mean, the show's called Doctor Who, not the Cybermen, for a reason. This is really not about me. Not even a little bit. Nothing about this is about me.
If you still want me to record,
Of course I do. This isn't about me.
the thesis is your thing.
But it's not about me.
I don't want to take it over.
It's not about me! Nothing ever has been, nothing ever is.
I knew that I wasn't able to be there for you the way you needed me to. And I hated it. The whole big sister, little sister dynamic has always been weird with us. But I will tell you about the first time that I really felt like I was there for you as a big sister. We were helping Mandy move. I still honestly don't know what was going on. I don't think you ever told me. We were in the truck, and I think Mom and Dad were still inside of her apartment getting stuff ready. And you just started crying, and I didn't know why. So I went over there, and I gave you a hug, and you leaned on me. And you just cried for a while. And I was, it's okay, everything's gonna be all right. And I was rubbing your back, and we just did that for about a half an hour. I don't even remember what we did afterwards. I'm sure we did something to cheer up, but that part right there was very important to me. Because I'd just been talking with my therapist around that time too, about not feeling like I was the big sister and that I was letting you down. But it's like, yes! Not yes, but yes! Because I didn't want you to be sad, but yes, I got to be the big sister. And it felt really good to be there for you then. There's been other times since then too, but that's the one that was first.
I feel like I'm supposed to say now that it's all arbitrary anyways. That doesn't matter who's the big sister, who's the little sister. That we're just sisters. I can't do that though. Why would I want to? Why would I want to do that to Amelia or to myself? Big, little sister, yeah, both of these have burdens, but they also have joys from the times that we've spent in each of them. They matter. That's not to say that we don't both spend time in each role, though. The truth is, we fluctuate now, and I expect that we will for the rest of our lives. But that doesn't mean that we're just sisters. It means that sometimes I'm the big sister, sometimes I'm the little one, sometimes she's the big one, sometimes she's the little one, and we fill in whatever the other needs. For example, when we went Christmas shopping this year, our parents were a little too focused on playing Pokemon Go rather than Christmas shopping, and it was upsetting Amelia. So I was the one to pull them aside and be like, hey guys, I get it, Pokemon Go is my life too, but let's maybe tone it back for today and do that another time. Yeah? Yeah, cool. Now, 24 hours later, I had an anxiety attack at Mass, and Amelia was the one who held my hand for the entirety of Mass, the entire car ride home, and as soon as we got home, she immediately went and got her weighted blanket for me and my teddy bear. That way I could lie down underneath the weighted blanket and have something to cuddle with, even if everybody else needed to get up and do their own thing. I didn't ask her that day, but if I would have.
So let the sun shine in, face it with a grin,
Smilers never lose,
and frowners never win.
so let the sun shine in. Face it with a grin. Open up your heart and let the sun shine in.
Just a gulp of water for a second. Thank you to our in-person audience, to our YouTube audience. Oh, you guys are amazing. I love you. And we are now doing talkback portion. So if anyone has any questions online, feel free to throw them in the chat. Any questions in here, I am yours. Got everybody speak at once now.
There's a lot of pressure.
I didn't realize moving out of my apartment made her cry.
I was laughing at you. You remember that day.
Yeah, if you have questions about the process, about any of the stories, some of the recordings weren't there. Yeah, tech problems.
Okay.
I have a question.
What's up?
So being that this performance is about your relationship with your sister, how do you feel like the process of the performance has impacted your relationship with your sister?
Oh my gosh, I think it's been so cool. You know, when I was putting together the performance, I did several interviews with my sister in order to, you know, ascertain what memories were really important to her compared to which ones were important to me, kind of compare some of our memories on things. Oh,
I'm trying to give you this really quick, then you can keep talking. Oh, shoot. Answer this.
I'm not the thesis advisor.
If anyone doesn't know, Heidi keeps M&Ms in her office, and I think I'm the only one who eats them.
Not true, not true.
Good to know, good to know.
Keep the flowers, but.
Wow, so getting back, yeah, I did several interviews with my sister, and it was a really fun process, you know, getting to remember some of the things that were really important to her that I had totally forgotten about, and vice versa. You know, I got to share some of the stories in here, but a lot of the stories were just really good bonding time for the two of us. You know, having the chance to talk through, do you remember this from elementary school? Oh yeah, that was great. And talking about some of the hard times too, that didn't really make it in as much, but definitely having the opportunity to think about the memories that might be kind of peripheral for me and how important they are to her, and vice versa, you know, the ones that are peripheral to her meaning so much to me. So it was a really cool experience.
I already asked all my questions in the process.
Having performed the piece in the space with your family, what stood out to you in terms of how the stories felt?
It was just so cool. I mean, I was not able to see faces for part of it. I think the screen did help me actually see some faces for some of it. And
knowing, that I have my sister here, I have my parents here, I have my aunt here, and knowing that my sister was the only one who had read the script previously. So getting to surprise them with some of the moments, definitely seeing some tears.
Mhm.
Getting to surprise them with the really cute moments, I think. Like right off the bat, even with the music playing, Let the Sun Shine In, my mom was like, it was just so cool.
Question from YouTube land, from Honeybee. So, how did the process of writing and performing your thesis made you re-examine or look at your relationship with your sister in new ways?
Ooh, excellent question. It was definitely, it's funny because this thesis has really been a process that started in my undergrad. And when I was an undergrad doing these performances, a lot of it was very much about finding my space, defining who Alicia Utek is as a standalone human being. And then actually moving out here, I felt it became easier to become closer to my sister again. There were a lot of things that happened in undergrad that really made us closer again. And then moving out here was really when I was able to be like, I want this piece to be about us rather than about me. And so having the opportunity to work with Amelia, and she's the bomb.com, guys. I love her to death, obviously. And yeah, having the opportunity to work with her on this, having her do the voiceover parts, having her draw her numbers for me more recently, as well as finding her old numbers. It was just, I think it was a really good thing for our relationship.
I thought that really came through, just the love and the closeness. And I think I'll speak for myself here, but I think for many people, family life is fraught with so many intense and intensely negative experiences. And to be able to work through that.
Yeah, that's one of those things, all things considered, I had a phenomenal childhood. I have 2 loving parents, I have an awesome older sister, but there's still hardships. And I think a lot of times, and this is kind of a big running goal of mine throughout my life, of the narrative around people with disabilities and being close to them is either, wow, everything in my life sucks because of them, or they taught me compassion and kindness and all, and I'm like, she's a real human being, as am I. We both suck sometimes, and we're also both great sometimes. So really just diving into the humanity of our relationship, and being able to showcase it is a really big thing for me.
Emily Brennan has asked, I would love to hear you talk more about the choice of using voices in different moments. I was so struck by the way your voices seem to come together in a song, sister to sister, indistinguishable for a moment.
Yeah, that was a really great, so with that voice acting, I'm a comm major, I can speak. With the voice acting competition, that's one of Amelia's big goals in life right now, is to become a professional voice actress. So when I decided that I wanted this performance to be about us, I called her right away and I was like, yo, are you home alone right now? Cool, because I have this great idea. I want you to do voiceover for my thesis. And she was the best about it. She powered through recording all of it as soon as we needed her to, and as soon as I got her the script. And it was really kind of interesting. I had originally thought that I was originally thinking I would do more kind of a flip thing where I would tell some of her stories, she would tell some of mine. But I found it didn't really work out that way. As she talked about the now of Wolf Thought from ElfQuest, and really kind of living in the moment, hanging on to the after effects, I found that it made more sense for her to talk about those things and for me to talk about the details of some of the harder things. But then there were other moments that either one of us could have told the Pokemon stories, but this is just a little nerd moment. That was story number 3. I kind of got a sense that the projector wasn't working at all times, but that should have been story number 3. There was 3 up there. 3 is Amelia's favorite number. So just like that little moment of having her tell the 3 story and having it be an adorable story from our childhood of her being the best. So yeah, it all ended up feeling very natural of like what stories were told by me, what stories were told by her.
That was actually one of the questions I had. I really love the way that the books sort of functioned as touchstones. But I was watching the visuals in the background, but I felt like maybe because of the technical problems, they weren't quite as connected as maybe you were hoping. But can you tell me a little more about what those visuals are doing in terms of the story, the performance, how they're moving it along?
Yeah, absolutely. So the visuals were both a way to physically show something of my sister as her voice was going, while not presenting like an image of her. You know, if you're here in person, you have the program and you see this picture of my sister and me as kids. But this was something we talked about in our performance studies class last semester, was the power of having just her voice rather than showing a physical representation. But I still wanted to have something to show a physical representation of her and to kind of track the journey throughout. And I thought that that would be a really great way to showcase how, like I said, our brains work so differently. The images that come into our head for numbers alone just blow my mind, because I look at something and I'm like, 1, 2, and then like she talked about in a side conversation with our family, and I wasn't quite paying attention, so I don't know which ones worked and which ones didn't up there, but like 5 has currently, it's a snowy woods of pine trees, right?
Yep.
And she talked about, she drew a small handful of pine trees, but the reality is when she thinks of it, like it's just, her vision is full of all these pine trees. And that just blows my mind, because I think 5 and I'm like, maybe I'll imagine a hand doing 5, but like that's the closest I get to thinking in pictures. And so I thought that would be a really great way to visually represent both of us in our differences and in ways that she's changed by having the pictures from her numbers from 2007, which we just happen to be lucky enough that Mom made her do it and Mom kept it all these years. And then being able to compare now in 2021, and then just me, like, block letters.
What I loved, my dear, was when you came to the point where you were struggling and Amelia's voice was there to help you through it. And it just pointed out to me, for those of you who can't hear me or can't see me, I'm their aunt. And it just pointed out to me how much the two of you are always in each other and with each other.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, being identified as Amelia's sister, I talk about how it felt negative for so long, but I have really come to a point, and I think part of it has been through this thesis process, but we're like, the first thing I do, it's been very interesting to me, because like when I was in Minnesota, I was like, separate that negative from me and took it a step further. And then out here, like the first conversation I have with people, I'm like, hi, I'm Alicia, I'm a Civ. If you don't know what that is, let me tell you. So it's been really great to have that opportunity to not only embrace how much a part of me she is, but to let her know how much I'm embracing that she's basically at the core of my being.
Well, Alicia, I just want to commend you on a job really well done. Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to, I guess, ask someone who got into a PhD program, multiple PhD programs. And yes, like you have choice. So you are an emerging scholar, an emerging performance scholar. And so what we do exists on the page, and we also exist on the stage. So what you did was difficult. Kind of like dance, the best dance hides its labor. We just see the beautiful kind of product, and it hides the hard parts. But I just, I want to really acknowledge the work and energy and months of preparation that it took to get here. And I understand that you still have writing to do after this. So I'd kind of like to hear you talk about why performance and what performing this got you that just writing wouldn't.
Evan, you are speaking to my heart.
Yeah.
Oh, why performance? I mean, obviously I love performance. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm doing a master's program with it. That's why I'm planning on focusing on it in my PhD. But I think with this performance, it was one of those things I really needed not only to bring it to life, but to have it be publicly brought to life. Because a lot of my feelings with my sister, especially when I was in middle school, high school, it existed privately within my journals if it was ever outside of my own gut, basically. And so having gone through all kinds of, teenage angst and turmoil and whatever, being at the place where we are now, I really wanted to have this public testament to how much I adore my sister and how much we both suck sometimes, but we're also both amazing. And I think that even if I had written it, it wouldn't have done that for me. I needed to be able to embody it, to be in an actual vocal dialogue with her voice, not even just, like, writing letters would have been great, but who writes letters? It's 2021. Sorry, I know pen pals, but but I think being able to perform it was able to make it public in such a way that writing it wouldn't have. Did I answer the second question?
I think so, yeah, certainly.
Well,
are there any other questions?
I'll jump in with another, and I'm not sure you can answer this yet, but it's okay, because this is a process, and I think a lot of the writing that you're gonna do after this will be reflecting on this part of the process, but you said earlier that some of the tougher stuff, some of the darker stuff that you and Amelia talked about in the interviews as you were prepping all of this didn't find their way here.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have enough distance from it, you may not have enough distance yet, but if you do, if you talk a little bit about what some of the surprises were or what some of the challenges were in having the script end up like this. And why did some of the darker stuff not find their way here?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think I found it was hard because some of the darker stuff that I cut was the stuff showing me not being so great. And I really struggled with that because I really wanted this to be, again, it's not, previous performances of mine have been more self-centered and more of like, my sister's not a bad person, but also I need to be able to complain about her. Whereas this one, I really wanted to be like, yeah, I need to be able to complain about her, but she needs to be able to complain about me too, because we're both human beings. And I think what ended up happening was some of the harder things that didn't necessarily make it into the script, I felt were still too raw for our family. And so there was a certain level of, I came to the conclusion that I'm okay with sharing, but the way that the script came together, I would have had to find a place to fit it in. And while I could have done that, the script was already long. But yeah, I think definitely it was a tough choice about ultimately deciding to not have the parts that showcased me being not so good.
There are
Which
some
I like
kinds of honesty that are selfish, right? They're intended to hurt other people. but I didn't get that impression. I felt like this was like really generous.
Yeah.
Well, I want to piggyback on that because you shared a very deep emotional part of yourself. The darker parts, this isn't therapy. This is an honest expression of how it is to have a sibling with a disability and how it's affected you positively and negatively. So you can possibly be a voice out there for someone who was in your position before. But I think you did a really good job.
I mean, what I keep thinking about too, because these books were so important, you know, as artifacts in helping you shape your way of seeing yourself and Amelia and your whole family and all of that. These books were so important, and now you're contributing to that literature in a different way, you know, in a different way.
Yeah.
But and I think that's just like a thread that is very real
Mm-hmm.
in the way that, you know, and it's going to continue to evolve, right?
Oh, yeah, I'm not done by any means.
Yeah. You done?
Never.
Anyone in our family?
Also, I think it's worth saying, just since we're still, you know, streaming and everything, for anybody who's still out there in Zoom land, or not Zoom land, YouTube land, I'm so used to saying Zoom. You know, you are just a rock star in getting through the technical difficulties. We have had a struggle with the way that the tech has worked, which of course always happens. But Jake, you're a rock star for
Absolutely.
working
Oh my
through
gosh.
it. And
Thank you.
you know, and we, you know, we stayed with you. We stayed with you because you knew it well enough to fill and do what you needed to do. And for the life of me, I have no idea why it didn't work because we
I
tested it
recorded-
twice beforehand.
I
So,
recorded a whole thing with that Pokemon story,
Yes, you
and
did.
she
Yeah.
filled, and I noticed it didn't go, but she filled it in, no problem.
Right.
You rolled with that really well. The show must go on, indeed.
yes.
Yeah, it was excellent.
Yeah, the joys of live performance.
Yep, that's right. That's right.
But that's also the power of it.
Yeah.
Do we have any other chats from YouTube or comments from the live?
Some people sending love but not questions.
audience?
Um,
Well, and
That's a good thing.
I just wanna say how proud I am of you and of your sister for going through this and being open and basically bearing your souls, both of you. And honest, I guess.
Honest without being brutal.
Yeah.
Because some people take it as an opportunity, like he's with the slam book. Some people take it as an opportunity to be brutal and to get their licks in from damage done as childhood. And that's not what this was about. Again, like I said earlier, it's about honesty. It's about transparency. It's about you're not the only one. Somebody's gonna come across this on YouTube and somebody's gonna watch it and somebody's gonna start crying because somebody got it and that somebody's you. And you are willing to share.
Yeah,
And you
for
are
those of you in
willing,
YouTube land, these are my parents having this little
Yeah.
dialogue. So.
but you are willing to share that experience.
For the record, I didn't have any problems with what stories you shared. I didn't feel like you were self-shining or anything. They were fine.
And that's why you also were shown the script ahead of time, right?
Well, that and I needed to record.
That's true, that too. But I mean, but it shows that the process, like it was a collaboration from the first moment.
True.
Right, and there's no way that Alicia would ethically perform this without your,
Full knowledge and consent.
absolutely, full knowledge and consent, yeah.
I didn't, but I was told from the beginning, if there's anything I didn't want in there, all I had to do was tell her. But you picked good stuff, so so it's good.
I tried.
You know, she was absolutely 100%
Okay.
wanting to make sure this was okay.
That's what I think is one of the, having not known you know, the way that you were approaching your performances in undergrad years. But that's one of the things that I think is the coolest evolution is the, you know, the willingness and the ability to bring you into it instead of keeping you out of it.
Mhm. This is the end, come hungry.
Are we?
Yes.
So are we,
Things looking in virtual land.
Yeah, good. You got some people hanging around. Very cool.
Well, thank you all so much again.
Absolutely.
thank you to her again on Saturday.
Yeah.
Yeah.